Hello, this is Wyland with the FPV podcast, where we talk about the FPV community and everything we do with our radio-controlled machines. Before we get into the show, I just want to very quickly touch upon our Patreon giveaway. This is a monthly giveaway that we're going to be doing for our Patreon supporters. So if you're interested in supporting the podcast and being entered into the giveaway, please go over to fpvpodcast.com. That's fpvpodcast.com. Thank you so much for supporting the FPV podcast. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's FPV podcast. This week we're going back to wings and we're going to be getting an update to the WRA. You can tell Elvin's happy that we're going to be talking about wings this week, so I'll go ahead and let Elvin introduce himself. What you got this week, Elvin?
Hey guys, I came up, me and a buddy of mine, we came up with this new saying. It's called satisfying, which means you just didn't have a flight. You had a calming, relaxing moment where you and the ship is one. So everybody get your butts out there and do some satisfying. Hashtag satisfying. That's mine. Catch you.
It's cold outside, Elvin. But you know what? Yeah, go ahead and do some flying outside if you can.
It's been beautiful. It's been beautiful up here in the Northwest. We've had record days, 61 degrees in winter. There's a little bit of snow on the mountain. It's not normal. Okay. I can tell you that. We're enjoying it though.
Oh, definitely. All right, one of our guests, Mark. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Mark Ashton, operations manager of Video Aerial Systems. But on the weekends, I help Ryan O'Connor and Alex Grieve run the FPVWRA.
So while Alex is talking, the person that's actually working in the background is this guy over here. Alex, I didn't mean that.
We all know Alex really well.
Yeah, to an extent.
To an extent. All right, Ryan, please introduce yourself.
I am Ryan O'Connor. I'm the other guy behind the WRA.
Nice.
There you go. That's the quickest introduction I've probably ever heard from somebody. Come on, you can plug something. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead. Since you're talking, Ryan. Ryan, explain to us what the WRA is and what's going on.
The official title of it is First Person View Wing Racing Association, if you want to go there. FPVWRA. We are a group of pilots. I think we're considered pilots at this point. At least when we're not having uncontrolled contact with the ground. And we get together, we run a course, we have a lot of fun. And if you take it too seriously, we're probably not the group to hang out with.
I like that. Now, the FPVWRA, you guys are in your second year or third year? I can't remember.
Second full year. We ran 12 races last year, all at big events. This year we're branching out. So this year we're pushing the chapters. Mark is the man on that. He's been cranking with that, getting the chapters rolling. So we got the chapters rolling. We're working on an interface with live time. So you can take your event tracker or RF thing, the immersion thing, and throw it down and, record the classes and then upload it to us. And we keep standings and all the good stuff. We're trying to emulate what MultiGP does because it's been so successful, and go from there, grow the whole thing because it's awesome. Last weekend we had a race down here in Fort Lauderdale, and we didn't really push it that hard just to see what would happen, and we ended up with 25 pilots showing up, which was awesome. A lot of first time guys out there, and everybody had a blast. It was awesome. The people that have the field, it was at Markham Park, actually asked us to come back because we had so many people on the fence watching. They thought it was just really cool. So, it's got something that multi-rotor doesn't have, which is the ability to watch the race, right? It's very hard to follow a multi-rotor race unless you're watching the FPV feed. But you can watch the wings in the air because they're big, they make lots of noise, and they attract lots of people, which is a good thing and a bad thing, right?
There you go. Hey, you know what? In your second year, looks like you're trying to like, first year is always establishing the foundation, which you've done very well. I know a lot of you guys out there we're pushing that very hard. Alex was, putting down the groundworks. Looks like this year you're really trying to spread your wings a little bit, pun intended, and you're trying to grow this thing a little bit bigger, which is always great. So Mark, from your perspective, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically nothing more than enthusiasts, just like anybody else that's out here flying in the hobby that wants to go out and race. We have fun on the weekends, just like everybody else. That's what we want to do. But we want to do it in a safe environment that provides everyone a standard set of rules that at least gives you some idea of what you're getting into. So you're not walking into a race that has zero organization behind it, that has zero thought put into how we're going to do this.
That's very important.
Yeah, and again, as Ryan said, we're not the guys you want to hang out with if you're going to take this. If you think that, hey, I'm doing this because I want to become, the next Tony Hawk or something, but on the drone side of things, because we're not those guys. That's not what we're after. It's not what we want. We just want everyone to come out and have fun, including the spectators. So, that's kind of where we're at.
Definitely. That's pretty awesome. Well, Elvin, you had a year to look at the WRA, and what do you think so far?
Well, they had about excuse me, they had a bunch of races last year, and they were like all over the place, which means that gave plenty of people opportunities to get to these races, and they weren't like the first year of drone racing. When you found out about a race, it was usually like within a couple of weeks of the race. So you had to scramble and get everything, organized and maybe get a flight together. These races have been thought out a little while longer, and you've had 3-4 months planning time. So it kind of made them more of a solid base for the start of this year, because people remember, being given enough time to go to these things. And once you start something like this, you actually if you carry on for the next year, then the groundwork has been laid, and you just need to start filling heads, right? You just let everybody know, because a lot of guys I've talked to said they had great times at these races. It was great racing, great camaraderie. It was done well, and there was less drama than they'd seen anywhere else. So maybe we should commend these guys on doing stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Definitely. I think it's the right approach is not to get ultra competitive, but to make sure that you actually have an event people want to show up for and have fun with. That's really the way to build a community. And it'll drift down to the spectators, because if you're having fun, the spectators will have fun. That's always
right.
how it works. So let's go ahead and jump into kind of what is changing as we move out of 2017 and go into 2018. There has been several updates in rules. Isn't that right, Mark?
Yeah, there were actually quite a few. We modified some things. The biggest thing is we kind of updated the Spirit of Racing clause. Basically what the Spirit of Racing clause was last year was like, just come out and have fun. We're here to race. This year we took it a step further. We're here to have fun. We're here to race at the same time, but we're here to be fair. If it looks and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right? So Spirit of Racing says that if you come out here and you're trying to get some kind of unfair competitive advantage that is outside of basically the spirit, right? You're modifying batteries or just any random thing. You're not flying the course. Some stuff that you don't want to put in there because you don't want your rule book to encompass 400 pages.
Right.
That kind of went in there, and we've expanded that, kind of give, event organizers and race organizers more freedom to kind of on the ground say, hey, I've got this situation. It's not covered in the rule book, but I can apply the Spirit of Racing clause. Did that competitor receive an unfair advantage? Yes. Okay. Well, then it's a DQ or whatever he deems necessary for a penalty as the race organizer. Whereas if it's in a rule book, it's in a rule book, and there's no flexibility there. So it gives it's kind of a rigid flexibility thing for us. And then what we did was we updated the classes. One of the questions that I gotten quite a bit was, what kind of construction do these aircraft need to be? We had initially just kind of said foam. There was no specific type of foam. And some of the people that are DIYers wanted to bring out their foam board aircraft. But there was some confusion there. Can we, can't we? So we went ahead and said, hey, look, any foam, EPS, EPP, EPO, fan fold, foam board, blue core, I don't care as long as it's foam. And we did that basically in all of our classes. We kind of went back and said, to the pilots for some of the classes, do you want to see things like a flight controller? Do you want to see things like fences on your flying wings in the spec class? Do you want to see things like what was the third one that we voted on? Batteries, right? Spec. Are you interested in on the spec class? Do you want high voltage allowed? Do you want graphene high voltage batteries allowed? Do you want that kind of thing? Or do we want to just say, hey, LiPo, period, end of discussion? And that's kind of what we did. We put that out to them. They voted on it. And one of the changes wasn't necessarily a change. We kept it because we had originally said, winglets. And then there was some confusion with whether or not you could run fences on the spec wings. Alex kind of said, you know what? No, let's not go there this season. In October, when we put up the voting to the pilots that are members of the organization, we'll give them the option of saying yes or no to fences. They voted no, which actually surprised me, and I'm pretty sure I speak for Ryan when I say it surprised him as well.
Yes, it did. I did not expect the cards to fall like that.
Yeah, it was kind of a shock, and it didn't go 50-50. It was a clear, defined line. I mean, it was definitely 70% or more that were against fences. So we went ahead and went.
Fences is a pain in the ass. I mean, and pain in the butt to lay down properly. Too,
well, and that's kind of the thought in the spec class is to keep it simple to build. We don't want something that's going to require a lot of unnecessary measuring, if you will.
Right.
Fences, if you don't get them straight,
right,
the plane doesn't track.
Why put them there? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It doesn't track, and that they do help. They help track in a bank. They'll keep the nose up in a bank. There's a perfectly good reason for them, but you've got to put so much extra time into putting them in there that a lot of pilots, especially newer pilots that you're expecting to hit in the spec class, aren't going to do it. Right. And then I know it's come up again because a lot of people weren't around in October. They hadn't joined the organization, so they didn't really get their opportunity to voice their opinion. Flight controllers or stabilizers, basically just your basic gyro, say your AS3X from Spectrum. None of the pilots that currently or that were in the organization at the time we had the vote really wanted it. That was not even close. And it was actually kind of a disappointment. I joke with people and say, this is my flight controller, but the reality is it's technology. It pushes things forward, and it has its place. Alex and I both sat down and talked about it. And we're like, we should put it in. And I said, here's the thing. Ryan and I have talked about it, and we don't think that the pilots are going to want it based on the pilots that we have currently in the organization. And so we went ahead and we put it to vote instead of just going ahead and outright allowing it. And it got shot down. So,
shot down big time, like 9-1 shot down.
Yeah. It wasn't even close.
Yeah. And I was probably the one that wanted it, but it was way shot down.
Yeah.
Nice. That's kind of interesting.
Back to spec for a minute. Something Mark kind of touched on, but glazed over. The cool thing about spec is when the pilots are all flying and they all get a good start, they're all together. You'll see 4 or 5 wings together through the turns and everything, and it's incredible to watch. Now, granted, right, spec's not the fastest. It's swinging a 6x4 prop. It's limited to a 3S2200. You're limited to the spec motor, but it's cool because they're all together, and it's a big thing back to the spirit of racing stuff. Before I got into FPV, I was big into kart racing, flat karts. And the big thing there was everybody was always pushing the rule book. How far can I push the rule book to get through? How much can I clean up on this carburetor? How much, and that really took the fun out of it. Whereas here, when I got into it, I told Alex, I'm like, I want to do this for fun. If this becomes work, I'm out. And this has been a blast. We have another race coming up this weekend. We're running back-to-back weekends. This weekend's going to be spec and mini, but I'm excited. I mean, pilots are lining up. People are IMing me. Hey, are you bringing this? Are you bringing that? Mm-hmm. It's cool, man. It's a lot of fun.
No, it sounds like a lot of fun. But before we go on, just one quick question from a new wing guy, actually a no-knowledge wing guy. What is a winglet and what does it do?
Okay. All right. So basically, I'm going to give it as dumb an explanation as I can because I am not an aeronautical engineer. I can explain it well enough that you'll get the gist of it, right? Basically, a winglet is we use ABS or Coroplast depending on what kit we cut over at VAS, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just you can basically cut any shape you want. And you put it on the wingtips of your flying wing. It's nothing more than a vertical surface, right? Because when you're talking about WAG or certain aerodynamic stalls, a vertical surface on the aircraft is necessary. You can fly without it, but you're going to get some really unwanted characteristics that you just don't want from the airplane. And basically what happens is the winglets channel the air across the wing, the top of the wing and the bottom of the wing, and don't allow it to stall off of the wingtips. So you don't wind up with this, real funky wag or real funny nose tip tendencies or just funny stall characteristics that you have in a bank. That's as basic as you can get. I mean, there are guys that could really go into the where, the what, the why, and the how well beyond what I can. But that's the basics.
To also touch on that, there's lots of different theories on that. You look at VAS's wingtips versus TBRCs versus right wing. They're all slightly different in different renditions of the same thing. Mm-hmm. We were talking about fences, right? So fences are the inboard version of those. Yeah. So usually more towards the center. Sometimes you'll have 2 or 3. If you've got a hardcore, there's like 40. But I'll beat on Chris for a minute. I love him to death, but you look at that and you go, man, that's a right wing, or yeah, that's a VAS, or yeah, that's a TBRC. They all have their signature things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, there's no real defined. It has to look like this in order for it to work.
So the fences are just the internal versions of winglets. Then is that kind of
correct?
Well, I'll say something if you want to say it.
Yeah. Okay. So a winglet also increases your wing stability by decreasing the side vortexes that happen on the wing. So what happens is as the wing is flying through the air and the tips are actually moving slower through the air than the leading edge of the wing. So there's a spiral of air that comes off the wing tips like this. So if there's no winglet, which decreases the drag off the side, so it reduces this and evens out the plane and actually smooths out the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
right.
So
and it keeps it from sliding off the wing tips, which gives you that wag or bounce. Yep.
Which forces it over the control surface as well. So as you're rolling slower, there's still just as much air over the control surfaces. That's why you can fly it slower.
Right.
Okay. So winglets are allowed, but inlets are not? Is that how it's going to work?
Fences are not allowed.
Fences.
In spec.
Okay.
Yes. You can run whatever you want on Sport, on Mini, and on Unlimited, and also in the new beginner class.
Okay.
Ooh.
Interesting. Okay.
That's what
one quick thing about flight controllers. If there's one thing that I've learned, from Elvin and talking about you wing guys, is that there's a bunch of you that has been in this forever, right? Mm-hmm. And they're kind of old school. And I just have this feeling that it's like I'm not sure if you're ever going to allow flight controllers to actually be in a class if you allow them to vote? Because there's so.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you because I know where you're going.
Okay.
I know exactly where you're going.
So go for it.
Without going too far into it, there will come a day when flight controllers are not voted on ever again.
There we go. Okay, I'm good with that.
Here's my point. Here's my quick point. Flight controllers can be an important, essential thing to a new pilot. Okay. But so far, the ones that I've flown, once you get up to like 110, 120 miles an hour, they suck.
Yeah, they can't keep up with the airplane.
Right. They just can't. Like, and I know, like, I'm a dear fan of iNav. I really think it's a great system, an idea, a program, or a firmware, whatever you want to call it, system. And it's in the process. It's on its way to being something greater than it is today for the DIY guys. But when I fly with iNav, I know something else has control of the ship. I can feel it. And I know some pilots think that they can't, but I can. I've been flying that long, and I can feel the disconnect or the delay between me and the ship, because I've done the line of sight stuff. So I know what it looks like when I tell the ship to do something and the time it takes it to respond. And then I also know that once you get up to a certain speed, that's when the flight controller's deficiency really starts to show. Like, here's a great one. Like the TBS 00 camera works great. So going like 60, 70 miles an hour. Once you get up to like 120, 130, and as soon as you hit 140, you could miss half a football field. Yeah. I mean, it's just like that. And I'm not talking negative about anything. I'm just stating that in the way technology is today, we still haven't reached that point where I feel comfortable. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable flying a flight controller in a race that I know my ship can go exceed over 130 miles an hour. There's just no way I wouldn't race, because I would feel totally unsafe and that I was going to hit somebody. Yep.
And that's, touching on the old school guys, that's kind of the thing. They feel like it's something that is completely unnecessary, and they treat it like a training wheels kind of thing. Right. This is nothing more than training wheels, which, yes and no. There's going to come a time when flight controller technology will exceed what a pilot is capable of doing, and should absolutely always be on an aircraft. That time's not here today.
No. Absolutely.
It's just not. And from my standpoint, I've flown a lot. I've been flying for 12 years now, 10, 12 years. So I've flown line of sight. I've flown FPV for years. I've flown quads. I fly wings all the time. I've flown tricopters. I've flown, standard fixed wing, warbirds, you name it, with the exception of collective pitch helis, because I didn't want to spend the money. I've flown it, right? So I know like you said, it comes down to knowing what the plane is supposed to feel like when you're flying. Right. There's too much mush in current flight controllers. You cannot dial it out. I don't care what anyone says. You can feel it at 100+ miles an hour. Right. At 60 miles an hour, no, you can't. And at 40 miles an hour, when you're flying through a small gate, stopping, turning, and flying, you no problem, right? You don't feel that. And I think part of the mentality is that you get with the new guys coming over is, well, my quad won't fly without a flight controller. You're right, it won't. You're trying to fly a brick, right? It is not meant to fly. Without that computer, it doesn't fly. A wing will fly.
Right. It has lift, yes.
It has lift on it.
You can drop it out into space and it'll land somewhere.
And it will fly, exactly. If you got your CG right, it will glide until the glide slope has been met.
Right.
It'll do it. And once you trim an airplane, you're done. You take it, you fly at line of sight, you make sure your CG's right, you make sure you don't fly in a stall, you make sure you're not rolling out while you're trying to fly straight, you make sure the thing's tracking exactly how you want it.
Mm-hmm.
One flight, one battery. That's it. That's all it takes. One battery. And you're done. And now you're ready to race. Now, there's tweaking and all that can go into it for racers.
Right.
I can tell you right now, Shelby Vall, he does a lot of flying and a lot of tweaking on his planes to get him to where he can do some of the stuff he does.
Right.
But it's not the same as standing in front of yourself for 2 feet and hovering over the ground.
Right.
For a minute or two and checking oscillations, dropping it, coming back over, plug it into your laptop, make your changes. Right. You're not adjusting the pits. And a lot of guys don't want to have to deal with that.
Right.
And that's fine.
I totally understand that. And I guess the reason why I bring it up is I feel like your organization is the best organization to push the technology of flight controllers in wings forward. Because without actually a group buying them, there's really no reason why somebody would go and develop it. The reason why flight controllers on quads have progressed at an exponential curve is because everybody needs to buy one. So the firmware keeps getting better. I mean, like, you asked me a year ago, like, no PID tuning needed in order to make Betaflight fly awesome. I would have said, nah, that's never going to happen. Now, it's a reality. You can really just update to the latest version of Betaflight, zoom, you're gone. It's like amazing. But without that buying group, I don't know if you're ever going to have a flight controller that can, do 120.
You will. There's enough people now, I think, that are wanting to jump in it'll take off. It'll take some time. But Ryan, go ahead. You had something.
So I have a bunch of wings that have Vector in it, and Vector's a fantastic flight controller, right? It'll return to home, it'll do all that kind of stuff. I have one with iNav because I had to experiment with it. Right. So iNav is really cool. I have Kike Summerzini came out with it. It's a flight controller. It's awesome. It wasn't made for wings. It's actually made for 3D airplane pilots, and it's supposed to feel more natural. You're not supposed to fight it as much, and it's cool. I've got 2 of them I've been playing with for quite a while, and they're good. They are really good. The sticks still feel real, all that kind of stuff. But it's still not. I mean, when you're doing 120 miles an hour and you pull an Immelman hard, the ground comes up real quick, and you start talking about 30 millisecond, 40 millisecond delay, and adding the controls up, and all of a sudden you got a problem. Right. I just don't think they're fast enough yet. Wing pilots right now are fighting the same thing on the ESC side of things. We've got desyncs. Desyncs, ERPM limits, blowing up backs, blowing up speed controllers. I mean, we're pushing things so hard that manufacturers are having to keep up. I'll plug Castle here for a second because they're fantastic. They reached out and said, hey, what's the deficiency? And I said, well, I want a Beck. I want a 300,000 RPM limit. And I want this thing to be able to withstand what we're asking for out of a wing. And they came to me and said, hey, we have this multi-rotor thing, and we can throw some firmware on it for you, and let's see what happens. And I've been beating the snot out of it, and it's holding together. And they've actually come back and said, well, what do you think of us coming out with a wing line? And I didn't realize we had gotten that big, that somebody would think of that. So I see where you're coming from with the flight controller thing, and it's really cool. And I think we'll get there eventually, but I don't see a lot of us old school guys changing anytime soon. Until the thing can take over and bring it to a safe altitude, if you have a lockout or fail safe or something like that, I just don't see it happening.
I totally like I said, I think it's going to be necessary in the future. Mm-hmm. It's just right now it's not there, and I don't want to, no one to stop. Don't stop what you're doing. Just keep working on it, because I mean, when it feels like, like I bought a Vector, I got a Vector. So like when you switch a Vector into manual mode, it's manual mode. That's what I want to feel. I don't want pass through. I don't want air mode. I don't want, all that. I need a manual mode where the flight controller is not doing nothing until there's no signal. That's what I want as a pilot, a race pilot, a race wing pilot. That's the thing I need right there. If you can do that, I'm happy. And I'll say this about Castle. Castle has been an innovator from day one. They started making RC car speed controllers back in the day with the help of a few guys that I know. And they opened up a whole nother market. And today, they still are doing the same thing that they did back then. They keep opening up new areas and pushing the limits. And we really appreciate that out of a market and out of a manufacturer, because they don't just give up. They strive through. Anyway, that's all I want to talk about on Castle. But I mean, we have a large subject, and wing racing is very intensive, and we can split off on the little things. But I think what we should do is keep flowing, because it's a lot to discuss right now with what's going on in this market and trying to expand it too.
No, definitely. I think it's a very interesting subject, because wing racing naturally has been faster than quad racing. And quad racing, believe it or not, there's pretty big movement of guys who wants to slow down quad racing, make it so that, you're just not blowing up batteries, basically, because you're spinning 4 motors instead of 1. But with wing racing, it's always been about, progression of speed, right? You always go into at least a course area where you can really pick up some really good speed, and then you might get into a more technical area, and it's fun to watch that way. So I definitely don't want to lose that, but I'm curious to see where technology is going to go for the wing racing guys, to see if they can match up with the increasing speeds. I don't know if you guys are going to have rules to restrict speed limits, because you guys can hit higher speeds than quads really have to deal with right now. So like, what's your perspective on that? Are you gonna, as wings start getting into the 150s and the 170s, are you gonna try to restrict it back so that you're not having wings going at that speed all the time?
Well, it's going to depend on safety issues. Our track metrics are designed around safety, and around what the basic capability we anticipate the aircraft, not the pilot, but what the aircraft can do. You're going to have there's fast straightaways in some of our bigger areas that we run. Just for instance, at Stone Blue Flying Circus, when we run there, they have a massive area, and there's a front straightaway that's 200 yards long, roughly, and the planes will hit 125, 130 easy. You just got to make sure there's no one down at that end of the field, and you're not flying directly at them. Right. And as long as you've got that, then no, there's no real reason to restrict the speed. Yeah, no, I mean, I want planes to go as fast as they can. Now, that being said, we do also keep our tracks designed around a philosophy that the richest guy is not going to come out here and run around 2 flags, one at the end, each end of the field, and just see who can go the fastest, right?
Right.
We want to see who can run the fastest time. So you go out and you're going to run things like in Immelmans. You're going to have split S's. You're going to have chicanes. You're going to have 270s thrown in there, 180s. So and that really speaks more to the skill of the pilot. That way, everybody knows they come out, and I can come out as an experienced pilot with, say, $110 aircraft and run against a guy who's got a $280 aircraft and be competitive, versus I'm just going to run an open field with 2 flags, one on each end, and say I'm racing because I'm running in a circle, but my plane costs $400 and $300 of that is the motor and ESC and battery, right? And the poor guy who can't afford that wants to race, he can't go out and race that guy, right? So the track matrix puts it into a position where you're able to see stuff. Because once you get, honestly, if you've ever flown line of sight and you've ever flown anything that flies faster than 125 miles an hour, you got to have good eyes. Okay, we're talking, 50, 60-inch wingspan aircraft, and you're trying to run 150 miles an hour flying at line of sight. You really got to be on the sticks. You got to know what you're doing. So a spectator's not going to be able to follow that. So there's certain things, certain aspects of the track design that go into that to try and also give the spectator some visual show as well. But I mean, ultimately, no. I mean, if the aircraft can go 150 and the area allows it, and it can handle the track at 150 miles an hour, then it'll do 150. Go for it.
Go for it. Hey, there you go. You know what? Fun stuff. All right, let's go ahead and get off the rule stuff. But really, some interesting discussion there, and I think all of it sounds really great. So hopefully, you'll get some great turnouts. So let's go ahead and convert over to talking about the events, because obviously, that's what we really want to hear about is, where are all your events? And I hear that you have added new ones. So can you kind of speak in general about the lineup that we can see in 2018?
Ryan, why don't you go ahead and cover that one?
Sure. So obviously we had one last weekend, right? We got one coming up this weekend in Florida. We got one in 4 weeks in Florida at CFL. I mean, we're adding stuff all the time. The biggest thing to do is watch the Facebook page. We have a public Facebook page, FPVWRA, and then watch the website. And we've been adding stuff like crazy. So as people come to me and say, hey, we need things, there's the Stone Blues Flying Circus is in September or October this year. That one's on the calendar. There's another one, something games.
It's going to be the Virginia Commonwealth Games. That's in July, I believe, and that's actually going to be a really, really sick show, guys. We're actually partnered with Liberty University. We are going to play in a D1 college football stadium. Okay,
nice. We race inside.
We are going to race inside the stadium.
Oh, dude, I gotta go to this.
That is going to be sick. Now, best part of this is we're within 1 mile of a regional airport, right? But it is towered, and they're completely down. So, wow. I mean, it's going to be crazy, guys. And yeah, it's going to be big. They're going to throw a lot of stuff at it. They want to make it successful. We're trying to get there's some prize stuff on there. I can't really tell a whole lot because that's Jeremiah's thing, so I don't want to get involved too far into that. Right. But you'll basically think of the Commonwealth Games are basically like the state Olympics, right? Mm-hmm. For the Commonwealth of Virginia. So there'll be medals and stuff like that they'll provide, but we're going to try and get some other stuff as far as what Jeremiah's lined up. I don't have the full details, but that's going to be a really sick, crazy event, I think, because there's going to be all eyes on this. Tons of guys. We got all Saturday in the stadium, nothing but wing racing. It's going to be crazy.
Cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. Elvin, if you make it, we'll make a show of it. Actually, you're racing. Who knows what you're going to be doing? I like that. So
I want to go now.
It sounds like the vast majority of your events is in the South or also on the East Coast. Is that true, or is there some in the West Coast as well?
Well, we have most everything. The beginning of the season definitely looks like the South because that's where the best flying weather is right now. Right. So Florida has got amazing weather. These guys were out down in shorts this weekend. I'm up here in Virginia, and we had an ice storm the other day. I feel you. They've got the best flying conditions right now. So that's where all that is right now. And then Virginia, you'll have stuff in Virginia. We got, I guess the NAFPV is going to be in Canada. I don't want to speak on this 100% because we're not 100% confirmed. But last year we did run the racing at the NAFPV event, mm-hmm. Which was held in New York. We had an event last year in Vegas. I had reached out earlier to some guys out west, said, hey, if you guys want to do some stuff, we will be more than happy to. I've got a couple guys that have reached out, said they want to do chapters, and they'll be running some of their own internal events. If there's an event out there and someone wants us to come out and put on some wing racing, we'll come. I mean, we will absolutely come out. That's not a problem. So
give me a reason to jump on a plane and bring the timing system in the gates. I am down.
I have been thinking about doing a Oregon coast race where I know where there's a section of the beach that we probably got 3/4 of a mile open beach we could hit. And I've been talking to a few people and they're interested. It's just I need to get more things nailed down. There's a campsite here in Oregon called Whalen Island. And Whalen Island campsite is the only park campsite that in Oregon on the coast that is absolutely allowed to fly. Like their whole process is to be open for RC flying. So like you'll see guys flying sailplanes there. You'll see you'll see me flying gliders there, long distance gliders, and stuff like that. So and I'm not the only one. So, I mean, there's a bunch of guys, but I've been thinking about doing this. And unfortunately, the bridge to Whalen Island went down this winter in the first big storm. So when that comes back up, I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, happy to come out.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
That is a long ways to go. Okay, the Elvin Wilson flying special at the beach is in progress.
Let's do it. I am down.
That sounded more like a cooking show, but we'll go with that. Anyway,
as long as it's edible.
Exactly.
Right.
So obviously you're going to have a lot of events, and it's going to be updated throughout the year. So definitely, if you're interested in spectating or attending one of the events, or actually going to fly at events, go to their Facebook group. FPVWRA, am I correct on that?
That is correct.
There you go. There you go. Go over there. So let's talk about the actual tracks. We already kind of touched upon that a little bit. In these events, obviously, ahead of time, you've already designed the track. Is there any new elements that are going to be coming in 2018 that I don't know, are you pushing or are you trying to be aggressive on?
Yeah, I'm actually working pretty hard with some sponsors currently. We are in the process. We already have 2 inflatable gates. They are 25 by 15 and 30 by 15 respectively. They're massive gates. I'm working on a couple of sponsors trying to get a couple more of those gates. We're also going to introduce some inflatable pylons. And we're not talking about Hobby King pylons that are 8 feet tall. We're talking 30-foot tall inflatable pylons. The base on these things are 9 feet in diameter. They are huge.
That's awesome.
Yeah, believe me, they are huge, right?
Yes. And you ain't got no small hands.
Hey, you know what?
I couldn't resist. That guy had to do it. But anyways,
he won.
Right. So, but anyhow, they definitely they're incredible. Jeremiah from Stone Blue, he actually has a production company also, and he managed to wrangle up a vendor that was willing to work with us for the quantities that we wanted to buy, because we had reached out to a couple guys. The guys that actually make Red Bulls, they basically didn't, they're like, oh, well, if you're not going to order 50 to 100 of them, we don't even want to talk to you. You're like, well, I got to have a sample first. Right. I'm not going to order 50 to 100 of something if you're not going to show me what your work's going to look like. So, but Jeremiah found a company that's willing to work in the smaller quantities. So if I can line up some sponsors for those, we're gonna grab some of those. So I know I've got a dual sponsored one that we're working on the artwork and getting that approved through the sponsors. Once they sign off on the artwork on that, we will get that one manufactured, and that'll probably be the first one you see. I wouldn't expect that one until probably, I'm hoping somewhere, end of March, April timeframe. But yeah, that's coming, and that'll be cool, because we're gonna that'll replace flags on the course for your chicanes or for your 270, because those are 2 obstacles that people typically, when it comes to the track design, they want to balloon out. So they'll come into a turn for that 270 and they'll balloon way out, and they'll get so high up in the air you can't tell did they actually hit that 270. Did they go around it?
Right.
Something that large would definitely help. So that's kind of what we're looking at. That's one of the things. Those two new gates, and then we're adding in. Last year we had one race where we kind of threw in a split S just to see how it would go, and that's going to be incorporated into more tracks this year. So I think that's pretty much as far as design matrix stuff that we're going to be adding in and incorporating about it.
No, yeah, that's one of those ones I practice too. Split S.
One of the cool things about the gates and the pylons is if you hit them, you don't destroy your plane. You know, it will bring it to a stop. Don't get me wrong. It makes this awesome boom sound when you hit it, but you hit it and it just drops. It loses all its inertia. So, you know, if you hit a flag now, you're hitting a pipe. You're hitting or a piece of carbon fiber, depending on where you hit it, and you'll possibly do damage. So we're trying to make it so it's safe, and if you hit it, you're not destroying your stuff, because nothing sucks more than you spend a week working on your first spec wing, right? Your first spec race, and you plow into a flag or something like that, and you ruin your spec wing. Yeah, a steel gate. That would suck. You know, the sound of an airplane hitting the gate is a very distinct sound, and once you've heard it once, you'll be walking through a race event. You're like, oh, I know what that was. There goes another one. It claimed another one. You know, sometimes some people can fly out of it once they hit it, but it's very rare. But it's cool because it just brings it to a stop and it falls most of the time.
Yeah.
Actually, if you haven't seen one of their gates, I know they gave you the dimensions, but you really have to see it to understand the size of it.
You really have to stand in it.
Yeah, no, don't stand in it. But it's a lot of fun to watch like 2 or 3 wings go through a gate that size as fast as they can. It is a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot better than quads in terms of entertainment value. The problem is that like those gates, they're huge, but man, they are expensive. That's the only problem with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
I
definitely want to see the pylons though. To see a 30-foot pylon, I mean, that's like an advertisement in itself. Like, you know, a couple of miles away, you'd be able to see that for, you know, that's pretty awesome. So definitely post some pictures and let us know when those are up.
Oh, the minute it is, I'll let you know.
Yeah, watch Instagram, watch Facebook. We've been trying to post a lot more. You know, Mark and the problem is Mark and I are both not social media queens. So you know, we don't post a lot. So you know, I honestly forgot to post about the race last weekend and who won until my wife said, "Hey, I don't see anything on Instagram," and I went, "Ooh, yeah, about that. Yeah. Let me go ahead and do that." So. I've been trying to get better about it, but yeah, the Instagram feed is getting better by the day. I hope. I'm trying to learn.
Right on.
Okay, that's all you can do. You can keep on trying. That's about it. So talk to me a little bit about new chapters. Obviously, you have a lot of new events. You got some new track elements that are going to make things more interesting. What's the onboarding process for a new chapter?
Yeah, well, currently what we're doing is because it's so new and the website or the original website design wasn't really set up and completed for integration of chapters for self-registration. Let's put it that way. So what we're doing currently is all you have to do is just send me an email, marc@fpvwra.net, and it's spelled M-A-R-C. I'll set you up manually, and basically what I'll do, I'll just need your chapter name, number of pilots, location, address, phone number, email address, and then I'll manually input you on the chapter page. And then from there, any support that you need whatsoever, any questions you have, you can just email me and Ryan currently, or just refer to the rule book. It's a progression system, so everyone's going to start out, they'll start out as an affiliate. And then as you progress through the system, based on how many events you do, how many pilots you have and stuff like that, there's going to be a reward system for those chapters. Fairly similar to what MultiGP does. But because of the nature of wing racing, it's going to mostly be flags. There is a chance for your chapter to work up to receiving a free gate. So you could get your chapter, if you hit the platinum level, you would receive an actual air gate. It's probably not going to be 25 or 30 foot wide. We're probably going to reduce that down to around 18 feet. But that should still be more than sufficient. I've flown on I flew at an event last year where they actually had a custom, they went out and had one made themselves, and I want to say it was 15 by 15, and there weren't really anybody hitting it. So but yeah, just to get set up, just let me know, and I'll manually set it up, and then we can plug in your events manually for now. There's some integration issues that are being worked through, and hopefully we can get that going pretty soon.
Okay, sounds good. Is there, like, say, okay, I'm going to use myself an example. Say I'm interested in running some wing races. Like, what is the basic knowledge that I would need to know to really, get an effective chapter going in which, people can go in there and have fun racing wings? I mean, is there kind of like guidelines in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's we've got a chapter organizers page that tells you basically what, tells you kind of like what the rewards are, what you need to do as far as levels to meet certain goals. But as far as running a race for your chapter, don't treat it any differently than, say, you would multi-GP. Set your races up exactly the same. In fact, some of the guys that I've talked to, and one or two of the guys who have already started chapters in their local area, are actually going to use their multi-GP setup to run their races. And they'll integrate through the multi-GP and then turn around and send that information to me, and it'll get posted to WRA until we get some integration going and get crosstalk.
Okay, sounds good. Actually, that's a very good idea. If you follow a very similar format to MultiGP, then you basically have a bunch of people that already know how to run events for it, which is it's a very smart idea, and definitely would recommend going that direction if anybody's interested in running like a wing race, to follow the pattern that MultiGP is already set out. What about track design? Obviously, a wing track design is going to be different than a multi-rotor track design. Do you have specific guidelines set out for that?
Yeah, we actually do. We have a track design metric on the webpage, and basically it calculates out what your minimum track area that you have is, and you then take that track area, and it will lay out and tell you exactly how far apart you place each flag, depending on what type of obstacle you want to have. It also takes into account the top expected speed of the aircraft. So that if let's say you've got an area that's, let's just call it 300 by 500, because that's what we use on our metric. You're going to want to have 125 feet away from the flight line for your, or away from the start finish line for your pilot's flight line, or their pilot stations, and then within that 500 foot by 300 foot area, if you want to run, just give you an example, like straight off the website. So if you want to run a chicane, it's got 3 to 5 turns. Standard 3 to 5 turn chicane will follow the below equation for a straight chicane, no stagger. So this is your flags are directly in line; they're not offset. Distance between flags equals 25 plus 2 times the anticipated speed. So you would multiply your anticipated speed, say 60 miles an hour, by 2 would be 125. Add 25. So you realistically, you want 150 feet. You're not going to get it, so you shrink that down, right? Because you at 150 feet, you're only going to get your 3 flags in that 500 foot area. So you can, there's some play there. It's not. It has to be this, right? It gives you enough knowledge that you can go out and you can set up your course. But remember, there's flexibility there. It has to be rigid flexibility, because not everyone's going to have an area that's 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet. It's just not going to happen. They don't exist all over the place. Now, maybe Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, and Texas may have areas that big. But it's going to be rare that you're going to see that anywhere else, right? So if you've got to condense things down, you can condense them down, but you want to follow the basic guidelines. And then, I got to bring it in. I mean, we've actually had to do that at some of the events we've done, just because it just didn't allow for that large an area.
No, Totally understand. And here's one suggestion that I would give to you guys for like, especially for new chapter organizers, because I remember the progress that I went through when I was setting up multi-GP, and it was kind of the wild, wild west in terms of like how people did things, in terms of track design, how we manage things. I think for like the first year, the chapters up, it would be great if you just had them, if you had a progression of tracks already laid out, that they don't have to use it, but it's like, here are some tracks that would fit inside of a football field, which most people can find that area. And then you can, you know, basically lay out their first 3 races to get them comfortable. So really all they're doing is they're just learning the flow. And then from there, they can get, you know, creative, I guess, in terms of what they want to do, because that would have been super helpful when multi-GP started up, because they didn't have UTT courses. Everybody was like, what's a gate? You know, what's a flag? You know, we were like
running around trees.
Exactly. So, you know, until we learned that, I mean, everybody was just kind of like crashing into stuff, and it was crazy, and it took a long time, but I think you guys can probably build on top of something that's better.
Well, we actually have what we call wing trial courses. And it's they're progressive levels. You've got levels, I think currently on the website, we've got level 1 through 5 up. Alex has been talking about a level 6 design that he has in his mind. But the first level 1 will fit more than comfortably inside. Level 1 and 2 actually will fit comfortably inside of a 1.5 football fields. 1 football field for level 1. Level 2, you can do it in a football field sized area, but you're going to want to have if you can get a little bit more than that, that would be better. But you can definitely get those 2 tracks in there, and they are laid out. We actually have some pretty good artwork that I believe it was David Whidden did for drawing them up.
Video game man,
on the website. Video game man, that's right. So yeah, they're on the website also. They're under the racing tab. You just navigate there to the courses tab from or the courses button off of the racing tab, and it'll take you right to it.
Cool. All right, Elvin, I got a question for you. Since you're into wing racing and you also chapter organize, if somebody came to you and says, "Hey, I want to start a wing racing chapter," what would you tell them that they should do, or any kind of basic suggestions, or what they should look out for? Because, wings, they're a lot different than quads, so running a wing racing event, I'm sure, is much different than a quad racing event.
Well, first of all, I would make sure that they have a base group. You just don't want to start saying I want to do some wing racing if you don't have pilots to race with. You know what I mean? You end up like me out in the field by myself.
Some of the best videos come from when you're out in the field by yourself, though.
That's true. But they're usually on police lineup. But I'm sorry. But I would say make sure you got a group of guys that want to race. Because you can scare people away with talking about racing. Especially when, it comes down to, like, I show up and I grab a wing and I throw one in the air and I fly it all over the park, and then I grab another one and I throw it up in the air and then I fly it inverted around the gates, and then I throw one and me having my fun can scare a few guys away. So you want to make sure that you got somebody that can race. And a group of guys that want to do that. What I found out is it's easier to get people to come back if they have fun. Mm-hmm. So don't make it all about racing. Make it about enjoying and sharing the hobby, and you will pull more people in. And those pilots will be the ones that want to do stuff to help you out, like take over setting up races and getting 2 guys to run the races for you. Once you get to that point, and always make it so that they can help out. That's another thing. Always ask them if they want to do something. Like I found out one of the guys wanted to be a race director for a while. Hey, go right ahead, man. It's just one less thing that I got to do, and just make sure that you work together with these guys, because there's also a lot of learning that you have to do. With wings, it's easier than it was, back in 1992 for me, but it's still can be a pain in the butt for some pilots or for some people, because launching it can become a task that just makes guys curl up and crawl in a ball somewhere, launching a wing. It's that first 10 or 15 seconds of you trying to figure out what the hell it's doing.
Flight controller.
Right. That's why I said that earlier. I do believe that there's a point for the flight controller. There's a lot of great options out there that'll help you get in the air. And just remember, the last thing I'll say is put the goggles on as soon as possible. Don't sit there and anticipate and think about, I want to become a great line of sight pilot before I actually start the race. That is what will hold you back and put other pilots light years ahead of you over time, because you're too busy trying to learn how to fly opposite of the way you're actually going to race.
So what I heard from you, and these are some great suggestions, that if you do decide to start up a wing racing chapter, the first few events might actually be good if you just make it into more of a fun fly, come out and build your first wing and enjoy yourself, and then kind of slowly progress into, hey, do you guys want to go around the track and track sometimes? Are you guys interested? You want to, is that how you would do it?
That's how I've done it. I mean, I got a few guys that I race with and or fly with consecutively almost every weekend, and we fly quads and planes, and we do both. And there's weekends where we only race quads, and then there's weekends we just fly planes. And I leave it open to the guys, because it's, I can fly anytime. And I want to encompass them into my part of the hobby. I mean, I like to share. So, and I don't like, I've spent too many months and years being at the field by myself, out at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm cracking a rock star or something. And at 7 o'clock at night, I'm driving home, by myself. And it was all day by myself. So the thing I've learned is I want to encompass more pilots into it. I want to, because the more pilots there is, the more chances that I'm not at the field by my damn self.
Was that a rock star or Four Loko? I'm just making sure here.
It's a G-rated show. It's a G-rated show.
There's some events it would be the opposite. So, I'm just making sure.
I hear you.
Yeah.
No, that's actually some really good suggestion there. And I mean, can you guys give me a breakdown, in terms of your registered users? Is it all over the United States, or is it kind of mostly all southern states that can fly you around in nice and warm? Do you guys have any type of demographics on that by any chance?
Ryan, do you have the breakdown? I know it's all over. We have because to be in the pilots group on Facebook, you have to be a registered pilot on the website. Mm-hmm. And I know there's guys from Vegas, California, Texas. I think there's a couple guys from Arizona.
So there's actually go ahead.
There's a lot of people in Florida, but there's a lot more in the eastern U.S. that seem to be racing, and that seemed to come out of the NA, FPV. They seem to be really the wing racing pioneers. So I got to give them some credit there. Because there's a lot of those guys that still get together very regularly, and they were actually Adam Prolux was one of our first guys to be signed up as a chapter. He's like, dude, let's go. Okay, I've been corrected. The first to be signed up for a chapter. I mean, they were like, let's go, let's get this done. And they were one of the, that whole crew was one of the driving forces behind getting the chapter stuff done. If it were up to me, I'd push it off longer because I don't have the cycles available to make it happen. But they were very instrumental in making sure it gets done. The Vegas boys were right behind them. There's been people hitting me on Messenger on Facebook like, "Hey, how do I get registered?" And it's Mark, email Mark. Yeah. Mark will get it done. Me and that website don't go together, so I go to Mark.
That's funny.
Me and that website, good, though. Fake it.
Hey, that's what everybody does at the beginning, but that's good though because it shows that all over the United States there are people that are interested in, and they want to do these type of things, and hopefully you'll have chapters in regional areas so that people can start grouping together, and then they can sprout smaller chapters around that. Looking forward to seeing some wing racing. At least I'm on the right coast this time. There's a lot of good drone racing on the West Coast, but looks like all the good ring racing is on the East Coast. So that would be nice to see. Elvin, more plane tickets.
I know, and there's a reason why I don't show up at every damn wing race. It's because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And there is racing to be had around here, but not much, and if it was more intensive racing going on here in Oregon, that might draw you guys here, but that still doesn't mean that I'm going to have the opportunity to go, because I also had a family and kids and grandkids and, and stuff that, son's in his freshman year of high school, and he's already halfway through a college course, already. So it's like, that kind of stuff happens. But what I'm saying is I would love to go to all the races. I mean, there is some great races on the East Coast. And to be honest, racing on the East Coast has been like that for wings for probably the last 15 or 16 years, really. Because back in the old combat days where we took our wings and we would try to knock each other out of the air by doing it by line of sight, most of it happened on the East Coast. It didn't happen on the West Coast. And the Northeast guys have been a champion. They have a couple of champion combat wing pilots over there. And I'm just a lonely West Coast champion over here, with a little time. And if I want to come and play, it costs me a lot of money. Come play with my friends.
Time to move
there's
to
those
Florida.
Boys. Yeah, there's those boys in Vegas, man. There's some fast guys in Vegas. Yeah. And then, if we can
down
get
in Arizona too.
Yeah.
If we can get Ruben's rear end in gear, we got to get Ruben starting a chapter because, he may make cruisers, but he's got some fast wings too, Yeah, so if we can get him rolling, he's got to be close to you, right? What, a little 6-hour drive. It's just like driving through Florida.
It's 19 hours from me from here to Ruben's.
Yeah, right. 6 hours, like he said.
Yeah, it's 6 hours.
But I mean, hey, look, I plan. Me and Y, we're talking about doing some extracurricular stuff this year and getting out and being a little bit more seeable and entertainable too. And I want to come, like, there's some races I want to go to. And you guys have enough competition. It's not like there isn't. I mean, I don't want to act like I'm above the pilots over there, because there's a lot of great pilots on the East Coast, and some of you guys, y'all talk a lot of smack to me and behind the doors, but we just gonna have to get it on the line, Shelby. And Alex, I ain't scared of you, never was, and we can get it on at the beach sometime.
Just FYI, Shelby will wreck you before he lets you beat him. I speak from experience.
I know.
I was gonna say you guys are missing Hugo. Where's Hugo at?
Hugo will just crash himself. It's fine.
He'll crash in his gate.
The
Put Hugo out
is
front. Watch him crash himself.
Hugo, I love you, man. Don't flame on me.
Ah, there we go. All right, 5 quarters on Shelby, 2 quarters on Elvin, and 1 quarter on Alex. There we go.
That's the line right there, guys.
That's the line. Okay. All kidding aside, though, it's great actually seeing the growth of the WRA. But before we start wrapping up, talk to me about the classes. It seems like you also added a beginner class. What is that all about?
Yeah. So there was a lot of question last year about, hey, what's your beginner class? Alex kind of wanted everything to be kind of centered around spec, would be the go-to. It's easy. They're easy to build. They're slow. They fly, right? And you're not going to get beat by, theoretically, you're not going to go out and get beat by a 100-mile-an-hour guy who can hold turns. All you got to do is learn to hold a turn at 65 miles an hour and you're good. That didn't really necessarily go over too well. And for probably 6 or 8 months, I heard it. But at the same time, it was kind of one of those, are you just arguing for the sake of arguing? And for me, I'm the kind of guy, like, if you're going to present me a suggestion and you have a valid argument, you're right. I'll make it happen for you. Right. If you're just arguing just for the sake of arguing, I'm just going to move on. Right. The last probably, 3 or 4 weeks, some guys have been bringing some stuff up, and finally, Shane McDowell, I'm going to give him 100% of the credit. He came to me and was like, hey, look, you guys really aren't accessible. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, you want to bring beginners in or the sport's never going to grow. I was like, well, I agree 100%. What is your suggestion? And he said, you need a beginner class. You need a class that's basically whatever you want. And I said, well, we have the unlimited class, which is, run what you brung. Just show up and whatever you got, you can run. Well, that doesn't sound like a beginner class, because you're going to be running against guys who have a lot of money, and guys who have a lot of experience. So you're going to have high speed, very large aircraft. And I said, okay, I see your point. So what I did was I just said, here we go. I'm going to create the beginner class. We're going to keep it, we're going to keep it simple. Nothing fancy. There's 7 rules for beginner class. That's it. There's no wingspan limit. I don't care what configuration your prop is. You can have a pusher, a tractor, or a twin prop. I don't care if those twin props are tractor or pusher. I don't care. As long as you're 4S and under on LiPo. And that's simply to kind of narrow the field. We don't want guys coming out with a 6S pack running against a guy with 3S pack. There's no watt limit. I'm not going to test your watt. I'm going to look at your battery. That's all I'm going to do to make sure you're 3 or 4S or 2S. I don't care. Foam construction. That was kind of one of those, I don't really want you to do foam construction. I want this. Well, we have to take safety consideration into play here. If you're a beginner, I don't want you flying a balsa or a carbon fiber aircraft on a racetrack, because you could potentially lose that craft, and it could potentially tumble into a crowd, or worse, fly directly into someone. And I've been hit by a foam aircraft. It leaves a mark.
It does leave a black and blue spot.
It will leave a mark.
So like somebody punched the crap out of you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got we're going to limit you to 4 pounds. Yes, it will be weighed. That's all up weight. And then 200 milliwatt 5.8 transmitter, and it needs to have race band. That's it. There is literally nothing else. I don't care about anything else. And the plan will be, our recommendation will be to run that on WTC1. Excuse me. Or if you're at a large event, you run it on the spec track.
No, that
beyond that, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, if your organizer says, I just want them to get a taste for it, and they want to run an oval track, go for it.
Do it.
I said that because I was looking for what would be the perfect beginner class. I was thinking, what ship could be a perfect beginner class ship? And there's probably, let's just say, 8 new ships in wings that came out in the last year and a half, right? And out of those 8 ships, 6 of them are beginner ships. 6 of them. And then there's the old tried and true, the pop wings. They're all, cheap. They're, they're not laminated. They're cheap, and they fly well. And if you just follow some simple instructions, you can learn how to fly one and be competitive in a beginner race. Yes, you could. So, I was trying to find what the name, what ship would be, because usually when leagues do what you guys did was come out with a class, you name a few ships, or in some of the last couple of leagues ideas, they just name what you can and cannot use. And I like the fact that it's been open to using almost anything. I mean, you could run a Sky Raider, you could run a Nano Talon, you could run, a few things, a Recruit, so you could get anything in there, whether it's looks like even the Wraith, the little Wraith that VAS makes, you could end up racing that. And, I think it'll be fun.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a reason why I left this as the last segment for our podcast, and I'm glad Elvin brought up, beginner wings, because that's where I'm going to devote this last portion to. Is we're always about growing the community, whether it's the drone racing community or the wing racing community. So these next set of questions is about somebody who's listening who says, you know what, that sounds pretty interesting. I might consider getting into it. So let's go through the process of what a brand new beginner would need to do to get himself into his first wing race. Sound fair? So everybody give their suggestions? All right. Yeah. So I'm a new guy. I know quads. I might have flown, a few foamy wings, or not wings, airplanes. What is your suggestion for your first wing? Just don't go into detail. Just, whatever pops into your head. Elvin, you can go first. Limit it to 2.
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of companies out there, and I'll just stick with what I said earlier. The Pop Wing and the Wraith. Those are 2 really well-designed ships that one can be bought really cheaply and put together, and it's low cost, and you'll learn a lot from. And then the other one is a little bit more advanced. It'll give you some really good speed and agility. And I think if you start off with one or both, you're going to learn so much that you're just going to be compounding learning and in a short period of time.
Are those build your own, or are those like ready to fly?
Both of those ships are build your own. I'm sure you can buy a VAS mini Wraith from Stone Blue Airlines, or a VAS for a builder's fee. The Pop Wings are really cheap. They're like $50 for I think the 900 millimeter one, or 1200 millimeter one. I can't remember because I haven't owned one for probably 15 years. That's how long they've been around.
Uh-oh. Did I drop everyone? Nope, I'm here.
No, we're still here. Just go online, do like most people. It's one of those things I keep telling my kids. You have access to so much information. All you got to do is search for it.
The YouTube search, the Google searchies. Okay, good.
Google search it. Use this Google search it.
You're so funny. All right, Mark, you've been quiet for a while. What are your top few? I'll let you have 3. Elvin can only have 2.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna give you a ready to fly, and then I'll give you 2 build your own options. From a ready to fly standpoint, I would say the RMRC Recruit. It's already comes out of the box ready to go. You throw a battery in it and you can fly this thing. You're gonna have to plug your FPV gear in, but if you're already doing quad racing, you know how to do that. It does have a stabilizer in it. It's a basic gyro, and it will allow you to learn some of the basic characteristics of flying wings. We actually ran a couple of those at RMRC's FPV Fest. What was that, September of last year, on a course. We let them run with the spec wings because it was a small closed event. So we wanted to have more heats than what we had pilots for. So, and some of those guys were actually competitive. Now, if you want to build your own, I would start. I got to push VAS planes because I would be remiss if I didn't. I would start
with the hammer behind you saying you better.
I would actually start with a Banshee, which is a 36-inch version of the Wraith, which is a 27-inch wingspan aircraft. The Banshee is actually my personal favorite aircraft. That's not blowing smoke. That's not because I run VAS. That's not because I'm really good friends with Alex. I've flown a lot of airplanes. I love that airplane. I have 2 of them, and they're fun. They're maneuverable. You can build them fast. They will fly in a stall, which for a beginner is something nice to be able to do. You got to know how to fly in a stall and how to get out of it. So you don't want something that's just going to fall out of the air on you. But then if you want to go, now that's a twin boom pusher, top high wing aircraft. So it's more of a trainer, if you will, but it's not, right? So it's got a lot more preferable flight characteristics than a flying wing.
More predictable.
More predictable. There you go. That's the word. That's the word to be using. Personally, I don't ever tell anyone to start with a flying wing. I don't think that's where you want to start. However,
I can agree with that about 80%. Yeah.
I got you. I know, and it's an opinion thing, right? Everybody's got one.
No, I mean you're right. It's totally like the difference between the plane that you were talking about, tossing it, and the wing is so much difference. Like the wing, if you don't get it moving up to 30 miles an hour quick, then it loses its inertia, it loses its lift, it goes into the ground. The other plane, right. The other plane, you can basically you open the throttle and it'll leave your hand flying. You know, I totally agree, man.
Yeah. So, but then if you do want to start with a flying wing, and you're let's say you're a very capable wing pilot, or I'm sorry, quad pilot. You're really capable at doing it. You can pick up a wing and learn pretty quick how to fly it, right? So I would then go with just a standard spec wing. You don't want to go too advanced with anything. You want something that's going to fly fairly slow. A spec wing, sidearm toss, it goes right. It just takes right off. It's very easy to build. We have build videos on how to do it, and it's a comfortable flying airplane. There's been shade thrown at it, for the design, and some people don't like the way it flies. That's one of those things where honestly, I've flown enough planes that it flies well enough for a beginner to fly. It's not something that's meant to be a super high performance aircraft. That was never the intent. So
it's
that would be
crasher. That's what
exactly.
It's
a go out there
crasher.
And smash it up and learn to fly. Because it's laminated, it will take a beating. So I feel like it's a good starter wing for someone who wants to build something from scratch, from a kit, versus going out and getting it ready to fly. It is. That's just my opinion on it.
Okay. No, that's
as far as that goes. That's where I would go. That's kind of what I would lean to. But I always tell people, if it's your first airplane, if you don't want to go out and get something like a Super Cub or any form of top wing trainer aircraft, or even a T-28, that kind of trainer aircraft, you really need to be sitting somewhere in the line of a Banshee or even a Spectre and go bigger. Personally, in my opinion, that should be your first airplane.
Okay.
I do like the Spectre.
You like all the planes. All right, Ryan, I saved the best for last. So what do you got?
I can tell you what I see showing up at races. I mean, that S8000 reptile thing, that seems to be very common with
Sky Shadow.
With whatever it is. I think it's got 15 different names,
right, exactly.
Depending on who produces it. But I see that a lot on quad pilots that come over to wings. As an experiment, my buddy Mike, I handed him a spec wing kit. He's a die-hard quad pilot, right? Mm-hmm. I handed him a spec wing kit and said, here's your spec wing kit. Here's your motor. The race is in 3 weeks. And he went, okay. We got a new wing pilot. He went to his first race on Sunday. He placed second in spec and second in sport with a spec wing. Now, mind you, he's got a racing background, so he kind of knew what he was getting into. But my phone's been blowing up with, what about this wing? What about that wing? They keep wanting to progress. Right. So, the thing is, you got to get in there and get flying. Once you get racing, then it's whatever. It's all bets are off, right? I wish you guys could see my garage, because there is Wraiths and Spectres and Banshees and Anubis, and I mean it's bad. I'm so bad. Poor Mark. I'll email and be like, hey, I want 3 of this, and he's like, why do you need 3? I'm like, because I got to build them all identical, so when I hit a gate, I can grab another one and keep going. To get started, the S8000 or whatever it is, the RMRC Recruit is another great one. If you want turnkey, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't want turnkey, the Spec Wing is just phenomenal. It is really good. It's hard to screw up on. I've given a couple people have what first real wing should I get once they learn how to fly a wing with a Recruit or an S8000? Get a Spec Wing, because Alex does a great build video. You can put the servos in the wrong space. You can put the VTX in the wrong spot. The thing will still CG. It's very hard to screw up. And you know what? You nail the throttle wide open, sidearm toss it, and that thing is off. You're off and flying. And it really speaks to the design. I mean, it's ugly. I will admit it's ugly. It looks like a flying V. But it bounces when you crash. You don't blow stuff up. It's very easy to learn on. It's very forgiving. The CG is very big. The window is huge. You're not worried about pencil tips and balancing, and there's none of that with the Spec Wing. And then from there, it's build whatever you want. I've got stuff in the workshop that's 160 plus miles an hour, and then I've got the stuff I race, which is more in the 80 mile an hour window. My favorite race airframe is an ancient Anubis. It is not the fastest airframe. I think it's only about 100 miles an hour wide open on a good day downhill. But it turns great. And lots of the courses, there's just not a spot to open up at 150 miles an hour. There you go. See?
It's missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
You're missing the
Motor
go.
mount. I broke it.
Yeah.
I need a new one. Hey, I need a new motor mount. A metal one, not the foam one. It's
I'll hook you up with Jeremiah.
Since Worlds.
Yeah.
I got the right motor. I just had the wrong mount.
Yeah.
2814, 1800, 2100, somewhere in there.
This is the 2100.
Yep. Great motor.
I got that right after Worlds, after Alex whooped my,
Yeah, I love that airframe because it'll turn. It's stall resistant. I mean, it is phenomenal. There's lots of guys going out there. Not to get too far off the rabbit trail, but there's lots of guys out there that are building these 160 plus mile an hour wings, and then they get to the race and they're like, I got to throttle back so far,
right.
Because I can't turn. And, we're really trying to make it safe and for everybody to have a good time. Right. I don't want this to turn into pocketbook racing. That's the biggest thing for me. I want everybody to be out there and have a good time and go, man, I want to do this again next weekend.
Definitely.
Yeah, I really hate pocketbook racing.
Because you don't have the pocketbook to match. I understand that.
I had to keep wire around, if I wanted pocketbook racing.
One of those wings is still mine. I just want you to know that, okay?
I know. I hope it's still soon.
Okay, last question. I'll let you guys go because we are running a little late, and I apologize. Realistically, when you're learning your wing, how big an area should you shoot for to learn? And also, how many hours do you expect a guy to really practice a little bit about good flying, good turning techniques before you want to show up for a race? Elvin, you can go first again.
What was the first question?
How big of an area should you realistically use to learn how to fly? And also, how much stick time? Yeah, how much stick time do you think you should really have before coming to a race?
Wait a
minute. Did you say a football field or 2 football fields? I didn't hear.
2 football fields.
Two football fields. Okay.
If you have 2 football fields, you should be able to learn how to fly. I believe that's enough room. Actually, I can, with the right plane, you can learn how to fly in a lot smaller area. But really, 2 football fields, it'll give you enough time to go, okay, I need to turn around again. You know what I mean? And it'll give you time to make mistakes. And you want to fly 2 to 3 mistakes high. So, you can take a chance and go, okay, maybe if I put this input in, let's see what it does, and then you'll find out. But 2 football fields, and practice is important with everything you do in life, right? You cannot be proficient in writing your name if you don't know how to pick up a pen and use it, right? So the same effort I always say, if you put the effort as if you was in love with it, then you're probably gonna become a professional. You know what I mean? If you put the effort that you really want, like I always talk about, there's things on this planet I've done with the same inertia or intent it was to marry my wife. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if you're one of those people, you're going to put in the effort. You're going to take the time out to go flying. If you want to become better, you have to get out there and practice. And I would say me, I'm the type of person, I practice 2 or 3 times a day. I know that's not realistic for many pilots. You guys have jobs and other families and things to do, being part of the community. So I would say if you can get in a good hour practice twice in a weekend, you should be good in a month.
Okay. All right, Mark, what do you got on this question?
Well, I would expand on that a little bit. The 2 football fields I would say is more than enough room. Mm-hmm. I think that gives you a good buffer. You can do it in 1 football field, but two actually is really probably about right. Effort trumps talent any day of the week. Okay. The more effort you put into it, you're going to beat that guy who's talented and not putting any effort into it.
Right.
So the more flying you can put in, the better. But if you want me to put a number on it as like a minimum kind of thing, I would say you probably need to do 2 to 3 hours a weekend. And then probably give yourself a minimum of a month before you come out to your first race. Unless it's at a small club or chapter event, because you're not likely to run up against the guys who have been solely focusing on racing for 2, 3, 4 years. You're going to be running against a bunch of guys at a chapter level who really just kind of getting started in it just like you are. And I think that's kind of where it's at now, where you're kind of, I don't want to call it the ground floor. You're like on the third floor now with where everything's going for racing. You got a bunch of people coming in wanting to get in here and do this because they see how fun it can be. So now everybody comes in and they all learn together. So your chapter progresses along a nice natural curve versus your chapter's up here and then you come in and you're so far down here that you're just not even going to be competitive.
Right.
That's when it gets tough. That's where multi-GP's at right now, is that there's a lot of people up there, and then the new guy's like, what? I think I'm going to go try something else.
Yeah, you don't want to scare them off.
I just seen that guy do a candy cane, you know, that one, somebody said that to me, they saw the Sebring race, you know, and they saw the guys going around the pole, right? The 4 turns.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, you can do that? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, how long does it take you to learn how to do that? I'm like, it just depends on how much money you spend on crashing.
And I'll say this, that's the advantage Wings has over quads. I get quad pilots, you know, are heavy on their equipment. I'm going to use the term heavy. I'm not going to use abusive because you're expecting everything to be able to do certain things, especially when you see your favorite YouTuber do it. But there becomes a level of just so much weight being put on these quads that stuff's going to break. And when it breaks, it gets expensive. With an airplane, if you crash your airplane into the ground, you have a very good opportunity of simply pancaking it and nothing breaking except a prop.
Right.
If I've only got to buy a $3 prop every time I crash, and I crash once every week, that's a win-win to me, right? And if you do manage to break the airframe itself, glue and tape. And it'll fly, and it will literally fly exactly as it did before. If you glue it back together square and you don't put 55 pounds of tape on it, Shelby Vol, I'm looking at you, it will fly exactly the same. You know, it will.
Say, look at Shelby. I mean, Shelby tapes the crap out of everything, and it still flies good.
Yeah, no, it does. No, it does not. But no, and it'll still fly. I mean, and he's a prime example. I use him. I'm kidding, but I do use him as an example because if you look at his aircraft, he has so much tape on it. You sit there and go, that's not going to fly ever. It will never ever fly. And he does magic with it.
He has fun.
Yeah.
So and you can do it on a budget, man. I'm telling you that wing racing can literally be balling on a budget for some of you guys out there that think you're spending tons of money on quads.
Right.
There you go. All right.
That's me.
Yeah, you still have, I seen how many quads you have. Okay, you're not following your own advice. All right, Ryan, wrap us up. and now he wants a new one.
That's expensive.
Yeah, there's an expensive hobby. You know, the biggest thing I'll tell you is there's lots of guys out there that will help you get started. Right. You know, there's a bunch of guys I fly with who are quad guys who are finally seeing the light of, you know, how bad quads suck and how much wings are better.
Oh, don't go there now. Hold on. Don't go there now.
I'm not chiming in on that.
I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole.
I'll leave that one.
You know, listen, one day y'all grow up and realize wings are better, but that's okay. You know, well, you just got to get there. You know, there's lots of guys out there that'll help you. And the biggest thing I can tell you for racing is show up. You know, a lot of times it's a battle of attrition and on windy days. And if you're the last guy flying, you're the guy winning. You know, and if you don't think your skills are that great, you know, show up and go, hey guys, can you put me in the beginner class? Or, hey guys, can I run with the spec wings? You know, and a lot of times they'll be like, yeah, run with the spec wings. I don't care. You know, let's get people in the air. That's the goal here. And you know, there was 2 guys that showed up last weekend that didn't have much experience, and they were all nervous. And I said, I'll tell you what, we're gonna run some practices beforehand. Let's get you in the air and get you started on it, and then we'll see what happens. And listen, they were top 4 finishers by the end of the day. It was incredible, and they were quad guys. You know, it's a very different flying experience than a quad, but at the same time, you already have the hard part down, which is the FPV. Once you've gotten the FPV down, you're great. it's cakewalk at that point. The big progression I'm seeing right now is LOS guys getting into FPV wings. There's some guys I flew IMAC with that have called and said, "Hey, how do we get into wing racing?" And I'm going, "Oh man, like these were uber competitive guys in IMAC."
Like,
so,
oh, no.
I'm going, "Oh man, we're gonna have some fast pilots here." I don't want to drop any names because CFL is going to be interesting because they're going to be showing up at CFL, and old Shelby and Hugo and the rest of the super fast guys are going to get a rude awakening. I'm excited, man. I'm excited for Wing Racing 2018 and where it's going to go. It's going to be cool.
There we go. Looks like some other wing racing podcast is going to get some more attention. I don't know. Do we have a wing racing podcast? I don't even. Ruben, spool up more. You're doing that
spool
one.
Up another one.
Ruben, spool up another one.
Damn.
That'll be his fourth one, whatever it is right now. All right. Hey, thank you so much for being on. I know I kept you guys on a little bit long. Apologize for that. But Mac, can you just wrap us up with where can people find you if they either want to know more about yourself or about the WRA?
Mark?
Oh, you're talking to me. Sorry.
Oh,
I spaced. Sorry. Whoop, spaced out there for a minute.
I said Mac by accident, but I assumed you
yeah,
knew.
yeah. I was like, what? Who? Anyways, you can find me on mostly the Facebook page for the WRA pilots and the public WRA page, and then also FPVWRA.net is where you can find me, Ryan, Alex. If you got any questions there, our contact information should be updated, and just shoot us an email. We get a hold of you that way. I'm also over at VAS, so videoaerialsystems.com. You can check that out. Lots of new stuff coming from there, just to kind of get a shameless plug in there. We've got some new antennas and stuff about ready to drop pretty soon. So just having to look at the watch here and see it's getting close. So keep an eye on that for some
new toys.
New toys.
New antenna toys. I like that.
Alex has been really hard at work. So
Yeah, he's been busy.
He's always busy. That guy thinks in numbers, or they're not even numbers, okay? They're just squiggly lines.
He sees in RF. That's one of the weird things.
He's the Jedi of the RF world. That's
He's
what
walking
he is.
around seeing the SWR fractions.
Oh yeah, and Mark's gotten really good at locking him in the dungeon. Mark's like, "Here, I'm sliding pizza and Mountain Dew under the door. Just keep working."
That's cardboard. It's cardboard with pepperonis drawn on it.
Don't worry, Alex won't listen to this podcast. It's fine. He'll just hear about it from everybody else.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan. Where can people find you at? Same place, same time, same bat channel?
Yeah, some days. I mean, I'm listed as an admin on there. So if anybody wants to reach out, I'm click the little thing that shows me. Don't be too scared. I'm only crazy on the internet. I'm not in real life. So, definitely reach out, say hi. If you need anything, I'm around. Listen, I've been in RC a really long time. I'm down to lend a hand. If you're stuck, something like that, send me a PM, send me a Facebook message, what have you. I'm on Instagram. I'm Wrecking Ball on Instagram. You'll see I tag a lot of FPVWRA stuff now that I'm learning how to use the thing. Same Facebook groups, all the normal stuff. But I'm here. Guys, if you're learning to fly a wing, you're struggling, you're stuck, reach out. There's lots of us that'll what can we do to help you? Because we want to see more pilots racing, and the only way we're going to get more pilots racing is if we bring new guys in.
Right.
I love flying with the OGs. Don't get me wrong. I'll crash into Hugo as fast as he'll crash into me, and I'll talk as much smack to Shelby as possibly can. But it's always nice to see new blood, and always nice to see guys grow in the sport. I can't say enough things that. If you're interested in it, if you want to come out, if you think it's cool, come out to a race. All of us will step out and help you, and make sure you get racing and get to have a good time.
There we go. Thank you so much, folks. Elvin, you got anything else?
No, just come on out and do some satisfying.
No, that's never going to catch on. All right, folks, we are done for the week. Thank you so much, and we will catch you next week.